They had this photo. They're like, look, he did it. Let's just pass this off as the real thing. Which is, you're also talking about the Nixon administration, where they were just full of shit constantly.
If you remember, this is where he tried to claim it was from, which is a Russian video. I don't know.
So there's different video where they ran it through, and they said it was real, and was it a Chinese program? But when they ran the American ones, the American images, they said that they were doctored. Again, it doesn't mean that we didn't go to the moon. But it does mean, okay, there's that. That's weird. Have you ever seen the Apollo 11 post-flight press conference?
Yeah.
It looks like a hostage video. It looks like a bunch of guys who don't want to be there. They look real fucking nervous, and they look real deceptive. And if you watch that video, it's weird.
Well, but I think that's the temperament it requires to do something like that.
Could be.
It's almost suicidal to go to the moon.
Right.
And so you have to be like barely even a human psychologically to do it. So that to me is just like, and they just went through this whole experience. Well, who knows what that does to the human psyche? To even just like be in the vastness of space, even on the space station, I feel like that would change me as a person, not necessarily for the best.
But there's actually like a psychological condition that they talk about, that this sort of understanding that we're all connected, that it's like akin to a religious experience that many astronauts get when they go up to the space station and look down at the Earth and go, oh my God, what are we doing? Like, we're all together in this thing, and we're so alone in the universe. And for us to be fighting over these trivial differences and these stupid lines in the dirt that we draw, when we are like just clinging to this ball in the middle of everything.
So then what would you say, or someone who is a full-on believer?
Not a full-on believer.
Someone who is a full-on believer in the moon hoax, what would they say to my other point that there is evidence we went to the moon? You can try to nitpick the evidence. Mm-hmm. There is zero evidence of a hoax, because that's a whole other event that would have had to have happened. There is no evidence at all, not one sliver of evidence ever, of that hoax having ever happened.
But I think that's a weird way to frame it, right? Is there evidence of a hoax of the JFK assassination, that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? Do you think there's evidence?
Well, but the event itself, being that JFK was killed, happened.
But that's not the conspiracy. So the conspiracy is, did he act alone? And is there evidence that he didn't act alone? What do you think?
I'm very skeptical that he acted alone. Yeah.
Right. But
I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. Nobody does.
Exactly. Same exact perspective. Same exact perspective about this moon thing. Like, it may have happened, but this was a time of deep deception in the American world. This is a time after Operation Northwoods. This is a time after the Kennedy assassination. This is a time. I mean, this is a weird, fucking shaky time in terms of propaganda. This is after Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. This is like, there was a lot of deception. Gulf of Tonkin incident. There's a lot of open deception that the American people were being subject to. And then there's this Cold War between us and Russia, this space war for superiority. There was we wanted it so bad we brought in Nazis.
But I think, I mean, the JFK is an interesting example, but because yes, there are things that I'm skeptical of that are claimed that I don't really have evidence that the thing didn't happen or that it didn't happen the way they say, but I'm still skeptical. So I get that. But it feels different to me because the JFK assassination did happen. The question is, how did it happen? But if we're going to assert that a major historical event, probably the greatest, the most significant historical event in history, or one of them, did not happen at all, no one did it, then like I said, so what you're actually claiming is that some other thing, they went somewhere and they pulled off this hoax and they planned it and they did, like an event happened where they were faking it.
Right.
And so what I would want to see, has anybody come out, any whistleblower ever, to say, hey, I was involved in the shoot, or I'm in Hollywood, I talked to a guy who was there. Well,
that's not even evidence. Real evidence would be some sort of documentation, some sort of a way to go over, like, there's a binary code that shows the distance between the Earth and the lunar module at every stage of the journey, but that's missing. That stuff's missing. All the tracking data, they can't find it. All the original footage is missing. And that could just be people who are really bad with historical items. That's possible. But to say that faking the moon landing would be a bigger achievement than actually going to the moon. I would say only if people could actually go to the moon. So here's the question. Can we really, everyone wants to dismiss it, can we really send a biological entity into space, go through that radiation, which is thick, covering the Earth, and have it come back alive? Well, supposedly, this is the only time people had done it. And supposedly the way they did it was by going through the top area of the Earth, where the Van Allen radiation belts, it's like kind of like a donut that covers the Earth. It's not uniform, and there's an area at the top where you can go out. But according to Bart Sibrel, they didn't go that way because you would have had to launch from Antarctica to do that. It's not really possible that happened, that they went that way. So he thinks that if they did go through that, there is no other examples of living things that have done that and come back alive. And they've known that this is an issue. They've known that this Van Allen radiation belts, which is this band of heavy radiation that covers the Earth and protects us, they've known that it's out there because they tried to blow it up once. There was a thing called Operation Starfish Prime, where they launched one of several nuclear bombs into the radiation belt to try to blow a hole through it. And unfortunately,
when did that happen?
67 maybe? It was Starfish Prime. But it did the opposite effect.
Why did they do that? Just for
they wanted to see what happens.
Shits and giggles?
Well, they had so much power, and you've got nuclear bombs, and you can't blow people up, but you're still doing studies. So they're doing tests all throughout Nevada, and that's what killed John Wayne. John Wayne got cancer because he was working on a set doing a Western right next to where they were blowing up nuclear bombs. Like 200 people on the set got cancer. Starfish Prime high altitude nuclear test conducted by the United States, a joint effort of the Atomic Energy Commission and the Defense Atomic Support Agency, July 9th, 1962. So this is like while Kennedy was in office. They were trying to figure out we will get to the moon, not in this decade, but in the other, or whatever he said. High altitude nuclear test. So the thing it did, unfortunately, was it supercharged the bands, and it made it have much more radiation. Not only that, it blew out power in some parts of Hawaii. I think it cooked a few satellites. Right? We talked about this the other day. It cooked a few satellites.
Okay, so can I ask this though? Do we have examples? So we're saying, well, we don't know if a human can go through the
right.
I would say, well, we do know because they did.
If they did.
Well, but if
we know they sent people into near Earth orbit. That's a fact. We know that.
Well, how do we know that if we don't know? I mean, maybe there's space.